Those young women that are listening to this, especially when you are nearing your mid-30s, please read up. Please just, invest time in educating yourself that there is a message that you can do something about it, take control of your life again, and you can get to know this new version of yourself. Not 100%. I'm not going to sugarcoat. Inevitably, every woman is going to go through menopause. Like, stamp your foot, stamp your mark. Don't let people define you. You need to back yourself up. I think if I were to advise my 25-year-old self now, I would say...
Hello and welcome to the Growth Game podcast. Today's episode is a special one. My guest is Frankie Turner-Shake. She is an entrepreneur, an ex-corporate boss. She's a mother, and she's a woman I'd never met before filming this episode. She was recommended to me by a mutual connection who thought that I would find her inspirational. And just from an initial chat with her, I could tell that it was the kind of person that I think would be good for a lot of people to learn some things from. It was not what I expected for this conversation to go like this. It was deep, raw, emotional, and vulnerable. And I'm not going to lie, I even questioned whether I would release all of it. But I think the messages in here are so important for anyone to bear in mind, especially if you're a young woman. These are conversations that need to be had about this biological clock that all of us have ticking, but for some of us it is more pressing than others, and what to expect later on in life to prepare yourself for it, both mentally and physically. And Frankie is an incredible conversationalist, and I think you will all find this so insightful. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Let's talk about you. So you're running a business full time.
Mm-hmm.
You're a mother, and you've also just started a podcast yourself. And am I right in saying it's specifically aimed at empowering women?
Yes. The podcast is called Business on the Rise, and it's really highlighting female entrepreneurs in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. It's exciting because you get to learn so much from your interviewees while you are interviewing them. So much of information is out there, and I feel very, very grateful to be able to, be the host. And it's kind of like getting an encyclopedia, but, direct, all sorts of information, and not just in terms of business. What I like about the podcast that we do is getting to know the woman, the person, the founder, and their story. And it's not so much about, the core function of marketing. That's not what it's about. It's really about the adventure, the challenges, and how they get themselves back up onto the horse. So, yeah.
And how do you have time for it and the drive to be taking this on alongside everything else?
Time management, I suppose. Although I'm not known to be the most organized and structured person, because that's something I need to learn. I'm not very organized, nor am I very, very structured. But I think when you have children, you have a level of foundation, a basic organizational skills. You have to be, because kids like structure, or my kids did. Now they don't. They're much bigger.
They grow out of it.
They grow out of it, and they're like, structure out of the way. And you're like, it's hard managing time as a mom and as an entrepreneur, and now the podcast, because there's only 24 hours in a day. And the fact that I'm also at this stage of perimenopause, that's even harder. That's been a real struggle, because physically and mentally your body isn't able to process things the same that I used to. I mean, when you're in your 20s, you're like, yes, you're physically the best, the fittest you've ever been. You've got the energy, you've got the drive, you've got that ambition, and, you want to conquer the world in your 20s. And then in your 30s, come into like the early part of motherhood. You learn so much about yourself. As you see your children and how you nurture them, and at the same time. And then in your 40s, that's when the game changes. For women like me anyway, who's got quite severe perimenopausal symptoms. And I mean, I can name you all the different symptoms that I had and still have that throws you off balance. So coming back to your question, how do I manage it? Oh, with great difficulty. It's a struggle every day. But I think one of the things that I am fairly proud of myself is the fact that I don't give up. I am a hard worker. I've always been very hardworking person, and I'm tenacious, and I'm a risk taker, and I don't see failure as an option. I never see it as an option. For me, there is no such thing. So, you wake up with an attitude, right? What's going to happen today? You know that there is no time. You don't have the time or the capacity to just like, I'm just going to mope in bed and have like a self-pity party for myself. You can't. You got to just beat your head and go, right, this is what I've got to do today. So I'm going to do it, whether I like it or not. I think you've got to have that kind of attitude and mentality. One thing that really, really helps is exercise. I exercise every single day. That's a non-compromise, non-negotiable for me. I have to exercise. I walk almost every day, and then I do weights training, and then I do some cardio, and then I do strength classes, and that I think helps me. That's the anchor of everything else. When I've done my exercise, obviously, we talk about the sign, the endorphins, and that kicks in. And then you're like, okay, now I feel good. Now I can conquer my day. So it's a struggle, Thomas, in the daily life. You have great days, and you also have, I have days where I struggle a lot more. When the hormone is imbalanced, there are days when I just like, I really just want to stay in bed and I really just don't want to do anything. I don't even want to I don't want to put my cap of being a mom. I don't want to put a cap of being an entrepreneur. I don't want to put the podcast cap. I just want to be Frankie today. And, anytime you get to yourself as Frankie is wealth, huge, huge wealth. And, it will get there one day. My kids they're teenagers. My eldest girl is 17 and she's in college and she's doing culinary and she's very happy with where she is now. So as a parent, I'm like, okay. And then there's my son, who is your typical teenager, and he's a boy, and he's like, Mom, look at me, Mom. And Mom, do you see my muscle, Mom? Mom. And then I have my youngest, the 12-year-old, and thinks she's 24. So I've got a few more years to go until they leave the nest. And I think when they leave the nest, then that's with all the other moms that I've spoken to, is they have this early nest syndrome or empty nest syndrome, and where they're like, oh,
what now?
Yeah. But I don't think I'll ever have that problem, because I think I'll always be busy doing something or finding the next gig and finding the next idea and executing those ideas. But it would be nice to just have an option of like, I've got the whole day to myself now. What am I going to do?
100%. And I think you need to be that busy to appreciate those days, right? Because the Frankie time, as you put it, feels so special because it's so rare.
Yeah.
Because you've got so much else on. But you mentioned that you've got this mindset now where failure is not an option, not staying in bed, taking those days. Was it always that way? Or was there a point in your life, or maybe did it start phasing in where you became more like that?
I think as a kid, I was always very adventurous and I couldn't sit still. And so being still and not doing anything was just not me. I grew up in a village in Indonesia, a very, very poor village, and it was 9 years of that. And when you grow up in as a kid in Indonesia, you learn to be super, super independent. You learn to be super creative. We didn't have TV, radio, all of that stuff. That was like a luxury for us. So we were, our playground was like the paddy field or the river, and our toys was like the buffalo and like the trees. We would climb a lot of trees and get some fruit, or the farm. That was like our playground. So you learn to always create different things to do in that village. And the village also teaches you to have this communal mentality. It's like you're always taking care of somebody else and they take care of you. So I guess that was like the foundation of, the village teaching you to, one, be active, to be creative, but always be looking out for other people and vice versa. So I guess that was kind of like the foundation of the kind of aptitude that you need to take and approach in life. If your question is like, have you had days or weeks and months where you were just like really, really lazy and didn't want to do stuff? Like, yeah, of course. In my 20s, I remember working for a company. I've always been in publishing. And I had this boss that I really didn't like. I had two bosses. One, I loved her, and then the other guy, I didn't really like him so much. And it was like, I was not very happy with that job. So there were moments where I felt, I'm going to be lazy this week, or a couple of days of, I'm going to pull a sickie. So I have done that. I'm a human, right? I have felt lazy and just didn't want to do anything. But I think that laziness it came from just being uninspired with the leadership that I had. Hence why I quit, and I decided to leave Malaysia, because I was in Malaysia then in my 20s, earning peanuts. And just the growth spurt in that field was just very narrow. And so I got out of Malaysia to kind of expand my career. And I've always been very career driven. And I think the difference between the generation now and the generation that I come from, where you have baby boomers nurturing you, their school of thought is like, you go to school, you go to university, you get your degree, and then you get your first job, and you must do well, you must work hard, and da 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 da, right? So I came from that school of thought and that kind of training from my parents. And my father, my late dad was English, and he was very, very, very ethical, very black and white. He was always nurturing for me to be like, you must work hard, honest living. There's no such thing as a shortcut, no such thing. And when you understand this, then, hopefully you will do well in life. So I come from that, that there is no shortcut. You just have to do your time. You have to be able to get your hands dirty, and being able to go through that whole process is that it makes you learn a lot more and it makes you grow. And when you take shortcuts, that's also kind of taking a shortcut of like, hang on, there was an opportunity for you to learn and grow here, but you've decided to just skip that. Whereas now I think, correct me if I'm wrong, like, you're much, much, much younger than me. Sometimes I feel that the younger generation, and even with my kids, I talk to my son and my daughter's like, but why would I want to do that, Mom? Like, I can get richer faster. I can make more money faster this way. There's shortcuts. And I'm like, mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't want to misquote who said it,
Yeah.
but there's an expression that I love, and it's the magic that you're looking for is hiding in the work that you're avoiding. And I think that's it, right? And again, another one that I love is it's not about the pursuit of happiness, it's the happiness of pursuit.
Yeah.
And actually doing the work to achieve it is going to make it so much more rewarding. And it's, an old tale that people who win the lottery end up blowing the lot and miserable because they haven't earned it. It's that build up and that sense of achievement, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I asked on that front is because in my 20s, I was lazy. Like I remember my early 20s, my mum, when I went back to visit her home, would have to drag me out of bed at midday to come down for lunch. And
really? What were you doing in your 20s?
Not a lot. So I went traveling at 18 and I spent 7 years backpacking around the world and going and living in other countries. And I think the main reason I was doing it was to avoid work. Right. When I was 18, I had 3 choices. It was go to university, which would have been a no-go for me at 18 because I was just too all over the place to do it and pass it. Join the workforce, which I tried for about 3 months, or go traveling, which a lot of people my age were doing then. And it seemed like a valid alternative to work or university. So I took that one and then was afraid of ever going back to real life, really. So it took me about 7 years before I eventually bit the bullet and went back to university at 25 and then really started getting focused, career driven, and having what you say where, okay, now I'm determined not to fail. Now if I wake up and I feel like having an off day, I'm like, do I actually need an off day right now? Or is this just one of those moments where I need to just drag myself out of bed and get on with it? And I feel like I'm getting more and more of that shift. And it sounds to me like you maybe did the same as well. Like in your 20s, you were potentially not as driven as you are now. And it's maybe something that's built up to where you are.
I think the difference between then and the Frankie now is that physically, like I discussed before, is that I had the energy back then in my 20s, and I had a very fit body that was able to, if I really wanted to work really, really, really hard, and if I was that driven and that ambitious, my body could support that. Whereas now, yes, I am very driven and I have tons of ideas that I want to execute. But my main issue right now is that where can I find the time? One, because I have my 3 children that I need to think about, right? Because that's my main priority, and my children, making sure that they grow up to be good people, good, kind, and happy people. That's the first priority. And if I with all the ideas that I have, do you know how many business plans I have? It's quite embarrassing. I have like about 5 to 6 business plans for various things. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And then I think, shit, do I have the time? Can my body support my ideas and execute this? And would I then compromise my time with being with my children before they go off the nest? So that's like the scenario that keeps playing in my head over and over again. And I always think about, right, in the current business plans that I have, it's the thing is, it's not whether I'm going to be successful if I execute these ideas or not, and whether I'm afraid or not. I'm not afraid at all to take risk, even at this age. because finally I'm able to back myself up. In my 20s, hell no. I was trying to get people's testimony to, and people's support, like, can I do this? Can I do this? In your 20s, you question yourself all the time. And your ideas are never great because you think other people's ideas are better than yours. Whereas now, I think, not that I think that my ideas are brilliant, but I just think that these ideas didn't come from just, out of thin air. These ideas came
lifetime of experience.
It's years of experience that snowballed into something a little bit more concrete. And for the first time in my life, Tom, I do feel that I can back myself up. I can, because I never have. I've never backed myself up. I've never believed in myself. I always thought that I couldn't do it. Even though I came across this confident person, there was still a very loud voice in my head that thought, because I came from the village and because I didn't have like the head start like everybody else, there was always this, it's not an imposter syndrome. I really don't like that word, but there was an insecurity, that I thought, well, I came from that. So can I really, be as successful as people? Am I deserving of success? Am I deserving of money? Again, when you come from that community, right, you're also with that mentality of like, you need to share your wealth, and you also need to have this idea that a distribution of wealth, a fair distribution of wealth. So that's that. And my thought about making money and making a lot of money has always been like, do you really need to? Is it that important? And if it is, are you deserving of that? So coming back now, I think finally I have a better relationship with myself. I am more confident that my ideas come from somewhere and a good place, and that I'm able to execute it. And I can say, you can, Frankie, you can do this. And if you want to make money, it's okay. And if you want to make a lot of money, that's even more okay, because you have to trust yourself that when you make a lot of money, that the foundation that you've learned is being able to distribute that wealth and give some to people or to places or to countries that need it. You are that person. So don't feel bad about making money. So that's the difference.
When did the penny drop that you could back yourself up?
Only recently. Only when maybe a few months ago. I'm 45. And last year was a terrible year for me. For business, it was great. It was really, really good for business. But what I learned last year, and this was just a big wake-up call, is that I was sprinting. Both my business partner, Gaia, and I was sprinting in the business. Like, we've invested money, time. We also have a current partner / investor who pumped money in. So there was a sense of responsibility for us to like succeed. Again, there's no option to fail but succeed. And, we were in the reds for a while because we opened our business during COVID. And there were so many challenges and so many curveballs thrown at us. And I felt like we were just throwing curveballs after curveballs. And after a while, you're like, there is a sense of defeat. And in that moment last year, we're like, okay, cannot cannot feel defeat now. We've gone this far, 3 years into the business. We've got to get across that green line. We've got to be in the green. I'm sick and tired of being in the red and not being paid enough for the time that we put into the business, because time is valuable, right? You also learn at this age that is your biggest bloody wealth and commodity. Every minute counts. And that, if you can put $1 for every minute, you should. And because we sprinted and because we felt the need to succeed, there was that danger of, okay, we're going to do everything. Da, 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 da. And we both forgot to look after our health. Even though we exercised every day, I generally eat well. I'm not a junkie. I don't eat junk food. But the fact that we weren't giving ourselves time to rest, to fully rest, that's when the shit hit the fan for me. Personally, I developed severe symptoms of perimenopause, and I also found out during the process of trying to find out whether I am going through it, they found some stuff in my body, and they had to have it removed, and I had to have a surgery late last year. And that was like when the penny dropped, the aha moment. And I thought, shit, I've been doing this all wrong. And I guess, coming back, I'm diverting, bear with me. When I do these podcasts, yes, it's great that I'm interviewing great women, successful women in their respective fields about business and entrepreneurship. But the best thing about that, again, is the learning. But the learning, not so much about the business itself, but the learning about that taking care of yourself is really, 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 really important. It's detrimental. It is the center of everything that you do. And what I realize is that, in entrepreneurship and in business, we think about being successful. We are always thinking about, okay, your business plan, your financial plan, your projection, marketing, branding, distribution. We think about all of those things that's inside this guidebook of yours. But no one ever writes about health in this guidebook. Ever. To say, right, I've got this great business plan. I know I can do it and I can execute this. But how am I going to implement this and making sure that my health is not compromised? That, for me, is the biggest lesson from 2023 and 2024. That my health comes first. The perimenopausal symptoms that I've had, and I went through a really dark place. And I am I'm very optimistic. I would say I'm the opposite of a pessimist. I'm the opposite of negative. I'm really positive, and I always think of like the positive. I never think about the negative. I refuse to. You can anticipate stuff, but I went through a dark time where I was just negative and I was sad all the time. Every day I'd be crying. Every day. So you asked me a question, have you had a time when you really, really struggled? Yes. 2023 was the time that I realized that I was going through perimenopause, that somebody else has taken over my body. I had no idea who this person was physically, and I had no idea who this person was mentally. It was the complete opposite of what I was, what I knew, what I'd learned. It was horrible. I really, really struggled. And I even thought to myself, now I understand why people go through mental health issues, because I never understood it. I'm like, I don't understand this. You just got to do these ticks. You exercise, you eat well, and you do all of this. And even with all of that, I was slapped in the face with dark thoughts, muscle pains, joint pains, brain fog. I mean, those are just the very basics. I started having hearing issues, all sorts of things. And I just thought, what is happening? And then I decided to just do something about it. I was sick and tired. January 2024, I became really, really ill, bedridden. And I said to myself, I had a moment where I felt sorry for myself. I was like, the fuck? But I also felt like I don't want to feel like this anymore. I hated feeling that I didn't like myself, did not like me. And I said to myself, I'm sick and tired of feeling sick. I'm sick and tired of feeling sorry for myself. I'm going to do something about it. So I went to see a doctor, a perimenopause specialist, talked to her and said, okay, I'm ready now to do whatever it takes. I'm not here trying to promote BHRT or HRT, but that has really sort of saved me. It's, for those of you that don't know, BHRT and HRT, BHRT is bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, and then HRT is hormone replacement therapy. There's two things. Bioidentical is soy-based, and HRT is more animal-based. So you take your pick. But a lot of the science has been debunked that there is this direct connotation and link to cancer. That's completely debunked. There's new science and new findings now that it's safe. And it's going to help a lot of women, not just in the perimenopausal and the menopause stage, but also in the alteration and the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. And when that two words pop up, the Alzheimer's and dementia, and that was like my biggest fear growing older, is not knowing, not remembering my friends and my family. That's a scary thought to me. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this. So I quit alcohol in January, cold turkey. I did a reboot of the gut. I started learning a lot more about gut health, metabolic health, and just researching on what we put in our body, taking it to the next level, is really going to affect the way you feel about you physically and mentally. And that there is a direct correlation between the gut and the brain. When your gut is inflamed, your brain is also going to be inflamed. So I'm pretty convinced that some of the things that I was feeling back then also has a direct correlation with the food and what I was drinking and eating. So I now am better. So there is a positive outcome to all of this. I'm not trying to communicate a dark message here. That there is a message that you can do something about it. If you are going through perimenopause and menopause, you can take control of your life again, and you can get to know this new version of yourself. Not 100%. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are days sometimes that I struggle, of course, as we all do, but I have more good days than, a struggle day.
One of the things you said to me before this was that no one warned you this was coming, and you weren't prepared for it, and you feel like other younger women should be, because it sounds like for you, one of the biggest things in dealing with this was, of course, understanding it, because you didn't know why you were feeling like this, right? Or what was happening to you.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you wish you could have said to yourself when you were younger, or something you could pass on to younger women who are going to go through this at some point? Anything they can do to help prepare for that?
I think that's a great question. Yes. If I had to go back in time, I would definitely learn and try to seek knowledge, because inevitably every woman is going to go through menopause. You're going to go through it, whether it's a natural menopause or whether it's an involuntary, not involuntary menopause. What do you call it? It's if you have some issues with your ovaries and your uterus, then you have to take it out, and then you go through menopause straight away. So it's not a matter of whether you're going to get there or not. You are going to get there at some point. And the thing about perimenopausal symptoms is that those start as early as 35. So I didn't know this. When you think of menopause, you think about you're just not having your period anymore, and that's it. You're no longer using your reproductive system. It's done. But nobody talked about the dark symptoms that comes with perimenopause. Nobody talked about the lack of estrogen is going to have a dent in your body and how you think and how you act. Nobody talks about that ever. Our parents certainly didn't talk about it. And sometimes we joke about it. Yes, I'm a joker, but I think this is a serious topic. And one of the things that I've learned is that in menopause, there's this book that I read called The Menopause Brain, and this is new science. Dr. Claire, she's a neuroscientist, and she's done a lot of studies on the female brain pre-menopause, menopause, post-menopause. So there is actually a brain shrinkage in a female's body throughout that stage in our life. People just assume menopause is just to do, with your ovaries and your reproductive system, and not knowing that there is a shrinkage in the brain. To me, that was like, what? It makes sense. We can no longer, for physically, we're not the same as we used to. And the way we think is also very, very different. And hence why there is this brain fog. Sometimes I don't even remember, what's that person's name and what day am I in? And you think you're crazy. I thought I was going nuts. And that's why you feel sad and you go into a very, very dark place, because you are in the unknown. And so for those young women that are listening to this, especially when you are nearing your mid-30s, please read up. Please just, invest time in educating yourself about not just your reproductive system, but just getting to know your anatomy, but also getting to know this menopause word and perimenopause, and try to think of different ways to shift your lifestyle choices, shift your F&B intake as well. Again, if I were to go back into my early 30s, I would change quite a few things. Like I wouldn't be drinking. I wouldn't drink alcohol. I wouldn't be eating junk food. I've got sweet tooth, Thomas. I love.
Me too.
I love my chocolate and I love, sweets.
Mm.
But I inhaled all of those things, and I just it's just too good. Sugar is so addictive. And again, I would cut out sugar slowly. I'm not saying that you shouldn't live your life, of course, but I think look into your lifestyle choices. And I think, again, you need to love your body. You need to invest in this. You need to invest in your health. That supersedes anything and everything else in life. Money you can make. If you are smart and if you are a hard worker, you can make money. Your health you can't buy. The only thing you can do is to invest and put good stuff in your body. So that's my message.
It's 100% right, and it's echoed from anyone that you speak to in the older generation. You speak to anyone that's, past 60 or 70 and has accumulated all this wealth, you know that they would trade almost all of it to be back in their 20s, 30s again and have a second chance at giving them that longevity.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother is 87, and her lineage, so to speak, has always lasted a very long time. And one thing that she talks about now, she's starting to go through some issues with her mobility and her health as well. And it's not until it starts going that you realize how important it was. And one thing for her is, at this age, we're so used to having health issues. We just go to the doctor, we get a pill and it fixes it, right?
Yeah.
She said to me the other day that she's at that stage in her life where she just needs to accept that some things aren't going to get better. So I think, the message to anyone when you're in your 20s or your 30s, and myself included, like, you feel invulnerable and you feel like anything that happens can be fixed, but it's not the case. And it's not until. Exactly.
It's okay. Take it. Have a moment. Don't worry. You're very close to your grandma. What's her name?
Sue.
Sue.
Yeah, she's my biggest fan.
What's her full name?
It's actually Ellen Bignell, but she just always been called Sue. And
What's she like?
Mischievous. She's
I love mischievous people.
yeah, especially she's in her
Naughty.
so naughty.
Oh, I love it.
We go out for dinner and she'll always look to embarrass us, but in the best way. You know what I mean? My mum's like a babysitter, always telling her to behave. Yeah. I think at one point I want to get her on the podcast as well, and a couple of people have actually requested it based on what I've said about her in the past.
She sounds like a gem. You definitely need to have her in the podcast.
She is, although I'd probably have to filter half of it.
Oh, no filter. No filter.
Yeah, so I think the message there is just invest in your health early before it becomes a problem, and you'll thank yourself for it down the line, because you say you can't buy it back.
No.
You aren't, always fixable.
No.
And invest early.
Only you can fix yourself.
And a lot of it is prefixing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's putting in that work to solve the issues before they arise.
Yeah. I think for a long time, our society and our culture has this mindset of, as you say, right? When you get sick, when you get ill, you go to the doctor, you take medicine, you take some this and this and this and that. And it's always been, I come from a school of thought now, it's preventative than cure, right? And not so reactive. I think we come from a society of being so reactive and not preventative enough. And I think you and I speak on the same tone, the same message when it comes to health, that you need to prevent disease. I mean, of course, like you can't if something is thrown at you that's not within your control, that's not right. But whatever that's within your control, like your lifestyle choices, that is within your control. If that's going to minimize your risk of disease or any ailment at this age or the next stage in your life, in your elderly life, then let's be preventative. Let's do that, right?
100%. It's much easier to solve a problem before it's arisen, rather, than trying to patch it up later. And one other thing that I feel like we went really deep on that, and I'm really glad that we did. That was a good conversation. But one thing I definitely wanted to pick your brains on before I let you go was about the business side of things, because you started off in a corporate career and you had great success in that, and you then moved into an entrepreneurial career and you've had great success in that. And I know a load of people that are following me here and listening to this are lost again, in their 20s, early 30s, and not sure. Yeah.
In what way are they lost?
I get a lot of people messaging me and asking, how do I get started in my career? Like, is finance for me? Because I don't know where else, I could be looking at the moment, and they're looking for guidance and looking for answers. And I know that in my 20s, I was like that as well. Like, the worst year for me was when I was 24 and I reached about as far as I could drag out, kicking off real responsibility. And I realized life wasn't going to hand me the living that I always thought it would. I wasn't going to be in the bracket of society or be able to give my future family the life that I always envisaged I would be able to give them unless I did something about it, right? But so I built that drive of, okay, I'm ready to work now. I'm ready to do something, but I didn't know which direction to go. I have all this energy to run and no direction to run in. And I see that in quite a few people that have messaged me looking for guidance on that. And I think, again, most of the listeners at the moment are women as well. And for you to have made a success in all of these areas, I think it'd be great if you could perhaps give some advice on what you would say to those people in their 20s who are looking for that direction to head in.
Two things. Firstly, can I ask you a question first?
Sure.
So when you were 18, you traveled the world. You did that for how long?
About 7 years. Yeah.
7 years. How many countries did you get to?
To visit, I think maybe around 30, but I did kind of long stays in some. So I lived in 5 or 6 over that period.
That's a lot of countries to cover. Did you enjoy that time?
100%. 100%.
Any regrets?
No regrets. I feel like you have two choices in your 20s. You either work really hard and you end up in your 30s rich but poor on experiences, or you live up your 20s and you end up rich in experiences and financially broke. And for the bulk of it, I was definitely the latter.
Would you change anything differently?
No.
There you go. You have your answer, right? For you and for those people listening in who are of similar age to you, there's no right and wrong. And, everybody has a variation and a different version of success. There is no one fine sentence to define success. Your success is very different to mine. Somebody else's success is different to mine and different to yours. The billionaires and the millionaires of the world, their definition of success is so different. You have to understand and you have to ask yourself, what is my definition of success? What is my definition of this? What you're comfortable with? If you want to be a millionaire and if you define that as success, then that is yours. Then you go and do that. But if your definition of success and as a woman, not that there's anything wrong with it, if you just want to, I just want to be a mom and nurture my children so that they become great humans, that's a beautiful success story too. And if you want to be in finance and be investment banking, and if you're 25, you're 26 and 27-year-old woman, go ahead. But redefine Like, stamp your foot, stamp your mark. Don't let people define you. You need to back yourself up. I think if I were to advise my 25-year-old self now, I would say, Frankie, you have to learn to trust yourself. Really learn to trust yourself. I know that's so cliche, and I know that it's easier said than done. But I really, really, truly believe this. And now, as a 45-year-old woman with 3 teenage kids and a couple of businesses, I do wish, and like I said to you, it's only now in the last few months that I'm backing myself up. 45 years it's taken me. It's a long time. But I think if you learn, the earlier you can have a conversation, an honest conversation with yourself and say, listen, this is what I would like to do. Because it feels right to me in my heart and in my head. It feels right to me. Then you need to back that up and not say, well, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe, and who's to say you're wrong? Even if you are wrong, and even if something doesn't come through, or success doesn't come through that, it doesn't mean you're not successful. It just means that you need to go through this process and this time and to learn. Everything is learning. And if you can inculcate that into your head, that everything is a learning experience, there's no such thing as I failed. If you ask me how many times I've made a mistake, tons. Have I beaten myself with those mistakes? Yes. But should I be beating myself over and over again? No, you shouldn't. Because I think I have had to make those mistakes to now build these businesses. And, who knows what the future will look like for me. And, there are women in their mid-40s and 50s who have started a business and become really, really successful. And it's not about age anymore, because you can do whatever you want at whatever time and age. It's what you're capable of and what you're willing to risk and what you're willing to compromise, right? And who knows what's going to happen with me when I'm 50. And I say to myself, like, at 50, I'm going to hopefully semi-retire, because my kids at that time would leave the nest, which leaves me a lot more time to do things for myself. But maybe I give myself 6 months of, I've had enough fun. And then I start my new business venture. At that time, I know I will back myself up. Again, going back to you in your 20s, I think, again, understanding who you are, understanding your strength, and understanding you're also going to have weaknesses. And I don't mean weaknesses you're bad at it, you're just not great at it. But if you can understand your strength and understand what you're not so great at, harness the great instead of like focusing on not so great, then the chances of you doing something greater is this, right? And if you are going to do this, it's okay if you're going to make a mistake, and it's okay if things don't go your way. That's fine. Absolutely fine. Because you're going to learn not just about that, but you're going to learn about yourself. And I think the best commodity is learning. Now, like in the past 1 year, I have dedicated, and more years to come, I'm dedicating this time of my life to learn. And not just from people, but I'm trying to learn about myself too. Like, I think people just are always learning about themselves. Things that I'm doing now, I would have never thought that I would be doing. When I was in my 20s, never did I think I would ever be doing a podcast. Like, hello, no. I'm terrible with technology. I'm a bit of a I'm the opposite of a geek when it comes to things.
I'm sat here checking over my shoulder to make sure this is still recording because I'm terrified.
But it looks fun. And so, yeah, back yourself up.
Mm.
Really back the F up. I'm trying to speak young person, an auntie. Yeah, back yourself up.
I think what you said as well, it's learning and experience. And it took me until I was 27 to find finance and find, okay, this is something that I could actually see myself doing. And there were so many things that I tried before that which weren't the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I say the worst point for me was when I was 24, which is when I was trying nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a year literally living at my girlfriend at the time's parents' house, not working, being a freeloader. And, you know, it sounds cushy, right? I spent all day in bed.
Your ex-girlfriend's parents must not like you.
They were so lovely, to be fair. We got along really well, and they still check in with me from time to time to see how I'm doing. So they were great people, but it wasn't good for me. You know what I mean? Because I was just not heading in any direction. So yeah, to echo what you said, just pick something and try it. And you're not going to know what you're passionate about until you've done it. You're not going to have never done finance and think, oh, great, I'm really passionate about that. Let's go and jump into it. It's only through doing something that you build a passion. And if it's not the right thing, then you pivot and you'll learn more about yourself on the journey and what to move into on the next venture.
Yeah. Trust the process. Really trust the process, that when you're going through that, something will come out of that. It may not be the objective of why you're trying this path. It could be something completely different, but it's going to lead you somewhere. So you need to understand and trust that. It's learning about yourself and knowing what you want to do. That's endurance. It's a marathon. It ain't a sprint. I'm 45 and I'm still trying to figure myself out. I still have questions about, is this it for me? Is this what's in store for me? I'm questioning all the time. And I'm 45. So the fact that you're questioning at 20, you're good. You should always be questioning. Always. You go through stages. Your interests change, your hobbies change, your passion change, your priorities change. They keep shifting. And that's okay. It's more than okay. Enjoy it. You're learning. Think of it like you're investing in education for yourself, not in an institution, but you.
100%. Frankie, let's wrap this up. And you do quite a lot of work with local women in the community here, helping empower them, you know, in business and things like that. If people want to keep up with what you do, where can they find your podcast?
The podcast is called Business on the Rise, and you can find us on YouTube and Spotify and the Apple Podcast.
Great. And any closing notes from you that you'd like to add to anyone listening?
Thank you for having me, Thomas. This has been surprisingly great. I mean, I'm usually on the other side of the table. I prefer being on the other side of the table. It's like, I feel like I have more control. And, you know, I'm just like, I always want to be in control, and sometimes, but that's okay. It's, again, I'm learning from you now, and I'm using this opportunity to learn about myself and to learn about you. And here I thought there's this very tall young man who is in finance, who is very confident. And then he talks about his grandmother and he sheds some tears. And, you know, it's nice to see that you're able to be vulnerable, even though you're 6 foot something tall man. And I'm hoping that people will see you deeper and more than what you look like and what you present, because I think there is a very sensitive and endearing Thomas in there. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for inviting me to this podcast, and I wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you, Frankie. I'll put Frankie's podcast description in the notes below. And
yes, and you can also follow us as a sales pitch, Bungalow 18 by Frankitas and Frankitas. Those are my two brands.
All of those notes will be in the description. And Frankie, thank you so much.
Thanks, Thomas.
Way deeper than I thought it would go, and honestly it was just an amazing conversation, and I really hope that the microphones have worked and this is recorded, because this is special. Thank you.
Back yourself up.
Thank you.
Thanks.